today I have a little bit of nostalgia for you. Understandably, I'm a big fan of Nintendo and Nintendo games, but also a lot of game series that were also on the Nintendo, and one of those classic game series, of course, was the Mega Man game series, and I'm still a rather big fan of Mega Man. I was such a big fan back in the day, though, that I actually made a comic book, and in fact quite a few comic books, and I've kept these. They have a little bit of, they're something like 11 years old now, perhaps a little older, but we're gonna take a look at these, these old Mega Man comic books now. Okay, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with the lighting, but at any rate, here is issue 1, the comic book, and this pretty much sums up the art style of the comic. This fortress, obviously, I took from Mega Man 2, and it looks like, and because I never actually owned the Mega Man games, because my dad owned a shop where they sold Nintendo games, we kind of always borrowed them, and so then I kind of played through the games. I never actually finished any of the games, but being a kid and having a much better imagination than today, I just thought, I can probably just come up with this stuff anyway. And you can see that there's a lot of incorrect issues here. First of all, here's Mega Man himself, looking extremely nerdy with a purple glove. And here's Rush, of course, next to him, looking especially dorky. And in the comic book, of course, he's called Mega Dog, because I couldn't remember his name. I actually came up with a second name for him, which was Zack, which is actually pretty cool. I don't even know where I took it from. And next to them is Dr. Light, but in the comic book he's called Dr. Laser, and as you can see he's completely bald. There's that thing on his head that shines light into the crevices of your organs when they cut you open. So he's like a real doctor, supposedly. And floating up menacingly above them is none other than Dr. Wily, and as you can see, instead of the Einsteinian mustache, I gave him a long beard as well. And the reason for these, of course, is because in my comic book, Light and Wily are actually siblings, brothers, rather than former partners. And of course, the single villain and the single robot master, can you tell who that is? Yeah, that's Crash Man. But in the comic, he's called Laser Man, because I could not, for the death of me, remember what his power was. And you can also tell that I got the robot masters mixed up pretty badly in this. There are none of the classic Robot Masters from the first game are actually in this one, and they got a little mixed up along the way. It's not a very long comic book, only 4 pages, 5 pages of A4 were used. And I had an intention, I drew these black and white, and I had the intention of coloring them, which is why they look so crappy, because I can't color for shit. But I got pretty tired of it after the first page. I never even finished that. And in this comic book, Mega Man is a genetically generated son of Dr. Wily. He's generated a clone of himself as an assistant, and he finally gets fed up with him when he brings a dog home. And so he locks him up in the tower with his brother, Dr. Laser. And what happens is that, completely without the knowledge of Wily, he's managed to somehow build this thing called the Megalator, which is basically this machine that he shoots Mega Man and the dog at, and they get superpowers. Because in my comic books, Mega Man and the other Robot Masters weren't really robots. They were humans endowed with superpowers, and when he gets shot with that beam, he gets this weird little thing in his hand that shoots uncontrollable streams of energy. And this is my explanation for the arm cannon, is that he needs it to regulate the energy that he shoots, so he shoots those little pellets of laser instead. And of course he has the teleportation power, which I was, strangely enough to get, and this is a really villainous moment to do. He realizes they've escaped and he yells, "No!" Obviously the comic's in Finnish, because I didn't speak a lot of English back when I did this. And here are the plans for the Megalator and the Mega... what did I call it? The Mega Gun! I didn't even know it was called an arm cannon, and this is where Crash Man gets created. I had all these cool little close-up shots. Obviously they look like crap today, but, you know, when I was little I thought they would look pretty cool. And of course, it makes the news. Laser Man's attack on New York City hits the airwaves, and it's Mega Man and Rush to the rescue, or Mega Man and Mega Dog. So that's pretty much sums up issue 1, and I even made little these little summaries of the plot, which was kind of cute. Here's Mega Man 2, issue 1 out of 3, so I made a rule because the first comic was on 5 A4s. I made the rule that all the other comics should be on 5 A4s. And I also colored the cover for this one. And you can see this got a little better. I got almost all of the Robot Masters right this time. This little weird fella here is supposed to be Heat Man, but he looks like Fireman, and he has that weird little face. He's almost like Cut Man. But this dome-headed guy here is Flashman. He has Flashman's power, but I called him Time Man, and instead he has this little dome for a head. This here, of course, is Bubble Man, which I got right. Here is Metal Man, but instead of having that metal blade on his forehead, instead he has a metal blade lodged into his head, which is kind of cool. Here's Airman, and I got him completely right, except that I called him Windman in the comic, because I didn't realize Airman was his name, and when I found that out, I thought it was an exceptionally silly name, even for a Robot Master. Here we have Quick Man next to him, which I called Boomerang Man, because I didn't know the word quick back then. Here's Woodman. I got him pretty much right, except that in the comic he's a lot more muscular. I can actually show him he's here in issue 2 of Mega Man 2, of course. We have Fireman, Woodman, and Airman. And he also has the power to shoot, turn his hand into a vine and shoot it out like a tentacle. Pretty awful, and but it was a lot more muscular. He didn't look like the fat Robot Master in the games. And of course, here's Proto Man. But again, I got his name wrong. I called him Karate Man for whatever reason. And he looks and he has more of a look of Mega Man. He has that little exclamation mark on his helmet. But this cover is actually very similar to, wait a minute, Mega Man 3. I bought this years later from a friend who no longer wanted it. So it's easy to see that I kind of mixed up elements of Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 2 in this cover. So I was actually paying a little bit of attention to them. And of course, there's issue 2's cover. And of course, the last one I finished, and these aren't even colored, is Mega Man 3. This cover, of course, is based off of the American cover box art for Mega Man 3, so Elecman's in it. But it also had Iceman and Stone Man in it, and actually here they are on issue 2 of Mega Man 3. There's Stone Man looking very silly, Laser Man and, Karate Man, or Proto Man, and Elecman, Spark Man, I'm talking about Elecman, and of course Wily. And, you know, this is pretty much what it was about. And then years later I did this, which was basically a rehash of the Mega Man 2 cover. And as you can see, my drawing abilities have greatly increased. And I decided just for nostalgia's sake that I would give Wily a crazy beard. And you have all the Robot Masters in the same order as they were in the Mega Man 2 cover. Here's Rush looking exceptionally buffed, and Mega Man looking nothing like what he looks like in the games. But this was really cool. I had an entire idea about doing an entire series, and at one point I started to make a new version of the comics, but then I realized later on, through the power of the internet, that I've been completely wrong about so many facts in the Mega Man series, that eventually I gave up on it. But I always wondered what would have happened if I had gone on and finished this. Well, I don't think that we'll ever truly find out.